Welcome back to 3D Politics. I'm your amazing host, Tom McKay. I've got all three Davids here. We're going to do this thing live. Hey, that was a nice little hiccup, wasn't it?
Screw it, we'll do it live.
It was amazing.
It was amazing as we work our tech out. And hey, it's Columbus Day for our exciting episode of 3D Politics. And
With
I gotta
or
say,
without paint.
it's amazing how
Native People's Day, Tom.
I just said something on the Fox 23 deal about Columbus. I said, you know, we honor professional risk takers in America.
Absolutely.
And thank you, Christopher Columbus, for finding the edge of the world. You know, literally, it was 30 years before Magellan circumnavigated the globe. Columbus was way out there breaking glass ceilings before the women could build one. And then somebody chimes in and
Were
says,
those water ceilings?
"Hey,
Proved the world is
that-
flat, etc.
some gal chimes in against me and says the man thought he was in India, which, you know, somehow that makes sense. So I said, or, you know, really, should he have stopped at the edge and asked for directions? And I bet you've been lost before just driving your car. You weren't attempting to explore uncharted waters with only a sextant in the stars above. The globe would not be circumnavigated for another 30 years, like I said. So what are you, still a flat earther?" Another person comes in and says, this is the more of the public school educated. So that little girl who came across the ocean for environmental rights should have a national holiday named after her. I'm guessing they think that Greta is the little girl and that she is a little risk taker. And to my response, she's been heralded as a hero, as a little risk taker. It's what we do. But the big problem is, we can all disagree on Columbus, but they're tearing stuff down, the statues in Providence, Rhode Island. They're smearing them with paint, splash from head to toe with red paint. Also in Chula Vista, in San Francisco. They're saying Columbus spurred centuries of genocide. I just don't see how they can do it.
I think I'll have to jump outside of this and agree with astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson was on Ben Shapiro's talk show, the Sunday show.
Yeah.
And he said one of the really biggest things about 1492, it was the day in which the Eastern world and the Western world were once again united after several millennia of division, because it was during the time way back,
Several centuries. Anyway.
yeah, well, no, the Bering Strait land bridge that
That's
allowed the Siberians and the Asians to come over and populate North and South America.
Yeah, when did that break up? That's the question.
Allegedly.
And I would say.
I'm going to make my point.
Campbell's watching.
That,
We've made it.
So then when the waters rose again in the sea, and now there is another point for you, that there is a natural ebb and flow to sea level.
Sure.
And it's not new. But anyway...
Climate's a recent phenomenon.
We
David.
had two separate civilizations. We had Western and Eastern. Western Hemisphere, Eastern Hemisphere. And we were joined together beginning on that 1492. Roughly. I'm not saying there weren't voyages before that, but the continuous communication that took place
he
from
brought
that
a
point.
much-needed cultural diversity to North America. Wow. Diversity's great.
Absolutely.
It's our strength.
Yes.
Well, I believe it's
Minority rights.
the Latinos are a conglomeration of the Spaniards and the Mexicans, correct?
The
lizard people.
The Western Indians of North and South America.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just think that's an important. You can't. I don't care if you're Native American tribe or who you are, Bolivian, Peruvian tribe. It's still a big point, because now you had communication amongst all the people of all the world once again.
Well, as a person who did something for the first time, he literally he proved there was no edge of the world.
Well, the first time
What about
in
the
a long time.
runestones?
True
Yeah,
that,
and I
true
gotta
that.
say to
What
my
about the Atlanteans?
to my Scandinavian wife, I gotta say, that's true. The Vikings had settled Iceland and then Greenland for many years ago. Now that didn't last, at least on Greenland. They died out.
Here's the
Right
thing.
here in
Here's the
Okinawa.
thing. We know that things had happened in time past. Okay, that all of this travel and everything like that had happened in time past. What is lost to history is just how they went about it. But we do know from history, because it's in the Bible, it's in the New Testament, it's in Acts, where you can see that men of every nation came, and the disciples spoke to them in their own tongue.
That's how Republicans tell history. I was going to make a Tower of Babel
Well-
joke, but I'm like, this certainly won't come up. It's too obtuse. Nope.
But my point is that that either it's true or it's a flat out lie. But the point is, if you believe it's true, then you know that within the last 2,000 years, travel like this was happening, and that Jews were in every part of the world, and they came to Jerusalem and were spoken to in their native tongue. So we know that happened. And I think what is important is that truth be said on this day, on any day, that we recognize that there are things that happen, negative, positive, whatever. Let's talk about those, and let's not throw paint on the negative. Let's not try to tear down things and destroy truth and turn it and try to revisit it and declare it something else.
The iconoclasts are clearly out of their lane. I mean, Columbus is not a religious figure, and they're pouring paint on him like he is.
Is he a saint?
I don't know.
Yes, Catholic Church.
Depends
says,
upon which church you belong.
The Catholic Church, believe me, as growing up Catholic, yes.
I heard he was a pretty nice guy.
And,
I heard he was a knight, too.
No,
Well, I also heard he was
right, and I
a
think we all
genocidal
agree.
maniac.
None of this whitewashes the
he
behavior.
was.
None of this whitewashes the behavior between the different civilizations and tribes, the exploitations, the slavery, all that, right? But nonetheless, you still have to say this is a big deal in that the world started all communicating with each other, for good or bad.
I love how the left uses this as a bludgeon against
Right.
conservative values and Western civilization. Like, everything is just a bludgeon.
Well, it's not even
most of the
conservative.
violence that exists among humans exists within people groups.
Right.
You look at, most of the violence in the black community, it's perpetrated by other blacks. Most of the violence committed against whites or Asians, committed by whites or Asians. I mean, look at the Second World War. It's like the White Civil War. It's just a bunch of white people killing each other. And that's where violence holds, the vast majority of it. Yet these leftists totally run this game on all of society where they gain political power by pretending there's some real interracial conflict. There's not. And there's not this animus that they pretend exists. It's just not there historically.
And socialists are always assigning the negative behavior of a group to one guy. Like Columbus created these things, these tragedies. They do the same thing with Trump. The one guy does something stupid and they say,
This
Trump
guy
caused.
named the white man.
Trump moves 50 people and they say he caused the incursion into the
A kid got hungry in a detainment camp. He's literally worse than Hitler. Wow.
All right.
We murder 6,000 children every morning. Not a problem. That's called choice.
Right out of here, the FISA court finds a massive government violations of Fourth Amendment. 138-page ruling by U.S. District Court Judge James E. Boasberg of the Foreign Intelligence Service.
That took you by surprise.
You didn't see this coming.
Well,
this is the first you've heard of this.
Well, what's so surprising is that this particular judge actually found that there were Fourth Amendment violations.
He must have really good glasses because the other judges weren't finding
Well,
these.
no, this judge hasn't found them in the past. So what's really surprising is that this particular judge has ruled that there were Fourth Amendment violations, specifically in everything leading up to the Trump spying, literally the Trump spying. And it's important to note because and this is the twist on the whole thing. The FISA court itself is unconstitutional.
What?
So them complaining about unconstitutional acts is the pot calling the kettle black.
But isn't their argument because it exists, it can't be unconstitutional?
Well,
That's a pretty good argument.
Well, the argument, and this leads to just what we've been seeing lately in the news, is that they go out to especially the Five Eyes, the British, and the various Commonwealth partners in our little axis of spying. to get around these laws, and they're not doing it. This is Snowden's warning to us, and it's come true. Jeb Bush, I hope you watch one of these days. I was right, you were wrong. And the point was that Jeb and I had a discussion, and he asked me.
It's true. I was there.
He was there,
Yeah.
and I was shocked by his reaction to what I said. I thought I was completely, saying something that could not be taken wrong, and boy was it. But it ended up. He asked me who was harmed by the spying, the NSA, and that's exactly what this case is. And I said, you are harmed because they will look at your stuff just like they will anybody else's. Mm-hmm. And what we're finding is that this case is all about whether or not they look at the mass amount of surveillance that they just collect from all of us.
So a little history written by Steve Bias here, this piece, I think it's Yahoo News, but like I was saying...
New American.
New American,
Can we please clap for Jeb first?
You gotta give up all these politics to say 3D
Please clap.
The 1978...
I'm a little tired.
So the history on this, for some that don't know, 1978 Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, the FISA, was sold to Congress as a public... and the public as a way to intercept the communications of agents of foreign governments and terrorist groups, not those of U.S. citizens. But amendments to the original FISA law passed after September 11th, 2001. The attacks on the World Trade Centers and the Pentagon have allowed the government to essentially surveil anyone, foreign or domestic, which would also include our current president.
Yeah.
Yes,
Makes
exactly.
sense.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is that our biggest enemies are not foreign. Our biggest enemies are domestic
What are
neighbors.
their names, David?
Sadly,
List them.
there's like 30,000 of them.
I think 435 members of Congress will start there.
Well, that's a good start.
I like my congressmen.
CNN had a graphic of, they listed about 40 different Republicans who were silent on the impeachment issue. Why don't you list everything else people are silent about? Talk about reporting on negatives.
Oldham makes a really good point when he says, your pledge, your oath of office, almost all of them contain the phrase, to defend and protect the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Constitutionally, support the Constitution.
Okay, support. Yeah, so the point is, there are going to be people, domestic, in this country, who are an enemy of the Constitution.
Oh, yes.
And they don't know that they need to look in the mirror sometimes and ask, sir, are you an enemy of the Constitution?
But how can you be an enemy of the Constitution if it means anything you want it to mean?
Yeah.
Well, that becomes the rub, and that comes down to what are we individually doing to support the Constitution, to support, obey, and defend it.
Okay.
Because we individually are the ones that are allowing this to happen, because we're not talking about it. We're not making it a point of political discussion. There's political issues, and then there are constitutional issues. The constitutional issues can't come up for a vote because they're locked solid in the Constitution. The political issues are those that are allowed a vote.
Okay, now,
and they merge the two.
To defend the Constitution, did not Jefferson say, if a law passed by Congress is in contradiction to the Constitution, you have permission to oppose it? Or what was his words?
If you read that at a courthouse, though, I think you can be arrested. So
well, you'll be hassled because they don't really have anything there.
I was baiting Oldham here. Did he say you have permission to? Or did he not say you have a duty?
He said it's a duty. In the Declaration of Independence, in fact, it was the epiphany that led me into the journey that I'm on now, was realizing that it is a lawful duty to overthrow the tyranny that
what legal authority does that guy's opinion have?
Okay. Only it being the unanimous first lawful document of the United States of America.
Slaves, checkmate.
But,
can't listen to him.
So I'm saying that to say this, folks. If you want to ask yourself, what can I do to defend the Constitution? Find some law and break it if it's unconstitutional.
Well, I wouldn't read it.
And then
Okay,
and then profit.
Tom has resigned from the program.
I'm a moderate.
Weak knee.
And then as your savings dissolve into nothingness and your life goes
I
down a
think
void,
an
just know that you were right.
An easier suggestion would be don't shy away from political and religious discussion. Engage people on Facebook.
Yeah.
Go ahead and contend politely if they're polite, and then
Yeah.
it's
Well,
the insults that they
that's
do.
the first start. That's the first step. The second step is literally like Mahatma Gandhi, just sitting down and not complying with whatever the edict is.
Okay.
The problem is, and this is how to do it
Do you have a Mahatma
without
Gandhi
well,
joke?
no, this is how to this
Yeah,
is how
that
to
guy
do
said
it.
racist stuff. You can't listen to him.
He just marched.
Well, this is how to do it bloodlessly. The problem is that they're using guns, and so it's not going to be bloodless. We are going to have shed the blood of patriots. The question is how much blood of tyrants are going to be
So
shed.
how much
Because right now they're
dehydrated
not
food should your average patriot have?
I'm impressed that he's quoting Mahatma Gandhi. I got in trouble for quoting Socrates.
Sure.
I've worked hard with that young man. He was a good kid, and they
Socrates?
killed. Yes, I worked hard with that young man. I'm proud of him.
And to think they named your street after Hemlock.
Yeah. What the heck is that? Yeah, I still don't understand how they can pretend to run for office, say they're going to uphold the Constitution while saying they want to get rid of the Second Amendment. I don't understand how that can even happen.
Any good politician isn't saying anything about policy.
Well, right now, Beto's not having
He's talking about somebody
He's the
else.
politician on the table.
Beto's not having much success with we're gonna take your ARs. But the point is that they get away with it because they have enough of our neighbors who are domestic enemies.
Yeah.
Who are in flagrant violation and rejection of the Constitution that would enshrines them rights.
Mostly through their ignorance. Mostly. Most of them just don't know better. They taught in public schools.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes. Well, that's why I'm not. That's why
Our soon-to-be top 10 public schools.
That's why I'm not calling for armed rebellion against these people, because we have to try to reach them because they haven't been reached. This message is brand spanking new.
You just have to make a good enough intellectual argument, and then they'll go, "Oh, that's rational and it makes sense."
No,
The problem will be solved.
no. They need to be warned before what happens next happens, because they need to get right
Are
with
you talking
with
about the
society.
electric boogaloo? What are you talking about?
Well, they need to get right with the Constitution, because there is coming a point in time where we need to reestablish law and order, because what we have is not law and order. What's called law and order and has the tag law and order is pure lawlessness. There's no resemblance of constitutional conduct of these people in what they're doing. I'm having a conversation with a lady who's watching right now who has been going through this same kind of thing down in Texas. There's true law and order starts with obedience to the Constitution. And only then, and then constitutional laws out of that, only then do you have law and order. If you have people usurping power, stealing power that they don't rightly have, and just by force of the gun, enforcing it,
That's
enforcing
called
it on the
precedent,
rest of.
and precedent is more powerful than the Constitution.
And yes, but that's lawless precedence.
If you're just tuning in, you're finding us right here, 3D Politics Live. I'm Tom McKay, your fantastic host with all three Davids that matter, David Van, David Oldham, and David D'Ambroso. You can catch David Van, SoonerPolitics.org, and also David Oldham, ConstitutionalGrounds.com, and David D'Ambroso right there on Facebook at Dave D'Ambroso.
And he breaks the internet once a week.
He just breaks it down.
Yes.
I want to move on to this national story out of Fort Worth about the tragedy of the police shooting this woman. Let me just read this from John Bacon, USA Today. Fort Worth police officer Aaron Dean resigns after fatally shooting Tatiana Jefferson, and he could face charges A Fort Worth police officer who fatally shot a black woman in her home while she played video games with her 8-year-old nephew resigned from the force but still could face criminal charges, chief said Monday. Ed Krause, chief, said Aaron Dean, who is white, would have been fired and is considered dishonorably discharged from the department. Krause said the U.S. Justice Department will examine the case for possible civil rights violation. Tay Jefferson, 28, was shot through her bedroom window early Saturday by an officer responding to a call from a neighbor who was concerned because her doors were open. There's a police lieutenant,
O'Neill.
Brandon O'Neill. He said that the neighbor, James Smith, called police at 2:23 in the morning, Saturday morning, telling the dispatcher it was not normal for his neighbors to have the doors open and the lights on. O'Neill confirmed that the video that the officer never, this is the officer's body cam, the officer never identified himself as police.
No.
And that he also knew that Jefferson's nephew was in the room.
Yes,
But he was very polite and didn't shoot the nephew. So
Well,
credit where credit's due.
that's
One
gun
shot.
control.
One shot. Here's the thing. Go to constitutional grounds, or we've got the constitutional grounds post up on 3D Politics. Go there and read the articles, watch the videos. It will madden you. It will make you angry because literally what happened is they walked past the front door, snuck around behind the house, made enough noise that the people in the house could tell somebody was back there.
Right.
She got up to go to the window to try to see what was going on. They had the doors open literally to enjoy the cool fall breeze that was coming through Fort Worth, and they were up late playing video games. Kid was 8, she's 28, she's over watching her nephew for her relatives, and she gets up to go to the window. The cop yells. The kid says it was unintelligible what he said. He could not understand him. And when you watch the video, what is said is so fast, it's barely able to tell when you're without a closed window.
From the article, the video ends with an officer shouting, "Put up your hands, show me your hands," before the sound of one gunshot. Jefferson was killed with a bullet fired through her bedroom window.
It reminds me of the orders given to the deaf man in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
And
they beat the snot out of him because he didn't follow clearly spoken orders.
Well, and that's the point.
Yeah.
But here, she was just flat out shot. And she had every right to be in the home. They bypassed the front door. They didn't knock. There are training issues. There are constitutional issues. Who of these police is getting a constitutional civics course? And I'm not saying civics in general. I'm talking constitutional civics, where we're talking a good, proper, civics course, which we all need, and constitutional grounds is working on.
From the officer's perspective, he doesn't know what's going on.
Well, he snuck around behind. He was literally trespassing on their property without a warrant and shot from her backyard into the back window. So
the warrants don't apply, right, when they're in pursuit of a potential crime. Is that not the case?
No, not in this case, because they didn't even know if there was a crime.
Again,
because they didn't.
Nobody witnessed or even suggested a crime was happening.
Read the articles the links that I put up on constitutional grounds, because when you read them, you will find out that the man who called the non-emergency line. He called the non-emergency line. He very calmly said, "I'm just concerned. I don't see the doors open and the lights on at this hour."
Well, is he an emergency expert? It still could be an emergency.
No. Rather than him going over with a gun or him going over and endangering his own life, he called the cops, who it's their job to go check things like that out. Rather than knocking on the door or making a phone call into the house, rather than doing any of that, what they did was they snuck around behind. You can see it; it's all on body cam. They snuck around to the back side, and then when the woman appears at the window, the cop gives the order from the dark backyard, which she can't even see, yells it really fast, and bang!
She has no idea he's a cop. He doesn't.
No.
Yeah.
And here's the point: she has every right to protect herself. She could have shot them and been well within her
Actually,
right.
No,
she
she'd
has-
actually have gone to prison.
She would have, if she would have shot him from her window out, she would be in trouble.
She would probably have already been arrested. Did you know that what stimulated this whole thing was a post that I saw where he's not even been arrested. He's still out. They're still investigating, and it's like that doesn't happen to you and me. It's instantaneous.
Right.
They come to a snap
Well, there's
judgment
not
like
even
when it's a
application
cop.
of the law.
Van, what's your
and-
point?
Well, here's the thing. I work with cops. I train on mental health things, but they go through training, and they always say, always, when you don't know what to do, fall back on your training. We're overtraining them. We're getting them so paranoid that, again, it's not whether you feel like your life is threatened, it's whether there is a reasonable threat.
Yes.
And we're getting that way even with our soldiers coming back from how many deployments and overseas, and they all have PTSD, and we wonder why. We're
Fighting for the Kurds.
overtraining them.
Our allies.
And the other thing I wanted to say is, a couple weekends ago, my daughter was over, and we're binge watching Stranger Things late at night, and I burnt some popcorn. And heck yeah, I'm going to open all the doors and windows. Popcorn stinks when it burns. There's plenty of narratives for this.
I think we can all agree that the lady would still be alive today if she weren't playing video games at an indecent hour. So kinda her
Nothing
fault
good
when you
happens
think
after
about
midnight.
Kinda
No,
her
listen,
fault.
your air conditioning breaks down, you're going to open the doors and windows. There's all kinds of things.
Poor stewardship if your air conditioning's breaking. Once again, no matter what.
Listen,
It's her
it's
fault.
good to air out the house, especially in the spring and fall, because you don't air it out enough in the summer and
All right,
winter.
we're a little bit off the edge.
Yeah, but my point is, it was asinine, number one, to make the call. But you know what? A conscientious neighbor, okay, I understand they don't want to go over there themselves. But cops sometimes go way over the line.
Well, it's things like
Sometimes,
this that will cause neighbors to think twice about calling the cops.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to. I would think twice about calling the cops because I don't want to get my neighbor shot.
Well, if you're really in danger and you're relying on the police to save you, they're really there to file paperwork and investigate after a crime's been committed.
Mop up.
Or they exist wherever they are as sort of a deterrent. So if you don't happen to occupy the same space and time as a cop does, you're not really being protected by them.
Yeah.
So if someone's really in your home, you've got to assume then, all right, well, if this intruder doesn't hurt anyone within 45 minutes, the 45 minutes to an hour and a half it takes the cops to get there, well, okay, great. But if minutes or seconds count, the cops don't matter. Call the next day.
To Brian's point, not only do we have the cops paranoid, the neighbor is so paranoid that he won't just go over and knock on the neighbor's door.
At
Look,
that hour of the night,
Yeah.
I can understand that.
it's 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah, but the lights are
The
on.
lights
The
are
point
on.
is-
Which is
the
a
point
little
is the
common
lights are on.
sense here.
What-
How many burglars flip on the lights to sneak around in
That's
the
a
house?
good point.
It's totally ridiculous.
You're right. That's a good point. I just
agree.
know.
The neighbor would have knocked on the door, and the person would have said, "Oh yeah, that's the guy that lives
Okay.
next door."
We got a veteran up in Owasso that died a year and a half ago. He had PTSD from his third deployment. His fiance was so concerned. She's having to provide for him and everything, and she calls the cops and said, "Could you go do a wellness check?" And the cops go over there. Bam, 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 bam. Police open up. He goes into a flashback and grabs his gun, and they shot and killed him.
Oh my
Okay?
gosh.
These things can happen, and I'm telling you, the cops, that's why I do mental health training.
Well, what's the solution? How should they approach the situation?
They need to not think narrowly like, oh, now this is my SWAT team,
Cop knock.
try it out. Yeah, I'm going to be SWAT tonight.
Well, the thing is, if
You
you're
know?
going over to do a wellness check, even in this particular case, it appears, because it was two cops in tandem that were working together, they each snuck around to the back. It wasn't one snuck around to the back to catch anybody who might jump out of a back window.
This man
Hang
from
on.
Uncle, how about if you knock on the door?
Well, that was my
give me
point.
a
One guy
break.
could knock on the door while the other one watched the backyard,
this
kind
is
of like what
not
they used
a movie,
to do.
okay? You're supposed to be just doing your job.
So what should they have done? That's my
They
question.
Well,
don't
you should
have- they
go
don't-
up to the door and
Yes.
knock on it and look at you got backup and you got your gun and you got your radio and your body cam. That's what we pay you for. Is
that
to
puts
risk
them
your
at
life.
risk.
Damn
They-
straight. That's what we pay them for.
They don't have probable cause to do anything other than knock on the door.
But hold
Correct.
on, probable cause is kind of anything they want it to be.
No, I'm telling you,
they don't have
I-
anything
I
constitutional.
have had
that they
to
can
call.
do.
I have had to call the police because I could hear activity outside my back door. And the police came, and the dispatcher's talking to me, and she says, "Do they have your permission to go in your backyard?" That's kind of how they normally do things.
That is proper
Normally.
procedure. That
Yeah.
was not followed
Did they-
in this case.
Did they make any attempt to contact anybody whatsoever?
No, not inside the home.
Well,
no,
and they
not
were on the
whatsoever.
offensive.
I believe
They
he mumbled
literally-
something before he shot
they
her, to be
literally-
fair. To be fair.
It was a yell. It was a loud.
They took
mumble.
out a
It was yell.
military. This was like a miniature Waco. They took out a military offensive on this
Yeah.
gal and an 8-year-old.
That's just
Yes.
it. And I want to know who's been training this law enforcement agency.
And you know what? You know what it really looked like when I watched the video. The
John
first
Rambo.
thing that came through my mind, was the guy who's doing the holdup with the gun, and he freaks and ends up. I mean, in this case, he yelled a couple things before he shot, but then shot real fast. That's what it looked like. It is what reminded me of that the guy gets nervous.
Law
He's
is
doing something he
only
shouldn't be doing.
concerned with what the officer felt at the time. Did the officer feel in danger for their lives? And it's extremely
Well,
subjective.
in this particular
and
case, we're going to watch
one-sided.
it because the entire point of them, their entire being in the backyard was a criminal act, and because that was a criminal act, everything they did afterwards was likewise criminal, and that makes it murder.
But we give
I'm
them
sorry, it was
license
murder.
to break the law. Literally, they turn
No,
on a
no, no,
siren.
no.
They can do triple the speed limit. If their siren's not on and they're
Yeah,
tripling the
this was
speed
not
limit,
a
it doesn't
traffic stop
matter.
where they traditionally risk their lives every time they get out of their car. They were on a military offensive against civilians. It was a simple act of violence.
Watch the video. It will make you mad.
We're going to move on to another
All right.
national story here, and it's another gun story. Several guns. This is by KOMO News Staff out of Redmond, Washington. Several guns seized from a Redmond man after concerning Twitter posts for the Joker movie. Apparently, a 23-year-old Redmond man who police say made concerning Twitter posts posing with weapons and referencing the Joker movie has had several guns, including 2 assault weapons, removed from his home as part of an extreme protection order, quote unquote, Redmond police said.
Yes, this is more red flag law nonsense, but somebody thought that he was maybe gonna do something perhaps in the future. Minority Report, kind of, we're gonna catch this before it can possibly happen, kind of nonsense. And he's had everything taken.
So can you have a protective order issued against Congress? Like, I think they're going to waste trillions of my dollars again and cause thousands of my countrymen to die for no reason. I think I've got a strong belief because of history that they're going to do this again. Can you please seize their assets? I mean, is that how it works?
Investigators became aware of his post last week, including one dated September 26, showing the man holding 2 AK-47s, one in each hand, pointing skyward with fingers on triggers. Ooh! And the caption on the photo read, "1 ticket for Joker, please."
You know, when I was a kid, 4chan was just pretend. Now it's real life, apparently.
All right. So, I mean, all they got to do is just freak you out. We got one more national story and 2 exciting state stories. So, tell us about this. Some sort of, I didn't know there was apparently corruption in this Hard Rock Casino hotel collapse.
Impossible.
Is that what you were referencing? Let me tell them about the news story.
Yeah, go ahead.
New Orleans Hard Rock Casino hotel collapse, 2 dead and multiple casualties. Collapsed in downtown New Orleans, 2 people dead. There's footage to be seen. And what does it say later in the article? The chief building inspector, Larry Chan, was suspended after federal probe of corruption allegation.
Yes. Well, the story caught my eye because I had quite a conversation with a fellow contractor who was actually overseeing a job that I was working on, and he was talking to me about the corruption in New Orleans, and that literally to get jobs approved by local inspectors, it took graft. And what happened in this particular case was several stories of the new Hard Rock Casino just collapsed. Now, that doesn't happen if the construction is up to code as it's going up.
Right.
Because it was
Building
upper
it
stories.
underwater, perhaps. I heard that it's under sea level there.
Well, it is, but that's a separate issue. As long
So
as
you
it's
think.
as long as it's up to code, under seawater, that's a sea level. That's a
There's
different
more
issue.
air pressure there.
But the point is that this particular story came out because even with all of the zoning and all of the proper regulatory steps that should have been taken, because government is so often corrupt, they allow for shoddy construction. I remember nearly 20 years ago now, that there was a floor collapse in Israel, a wedding chapel, a multi-story wedding chapel. On the third floor, they were all dancing, and all of a sudden, they ended up on the first floor as two floors collapsed. You remember that?
Yeah.
And several people died, and so forth, and people went to prison. The reason that we have inspections as things go up in public buildings is proper use of government, so that we make sure that it's being
That's what
built
we're paying
safely.
for, those types of protections.
Well, the thing is that somebody might use shoddy construction, sneak it by the owner and so forth. And then later on, the public will suffer for it. So government is there to make sure that things are actually being done correctly. The problem is when government is corrupt and graft gets you by with shoddy construction, we have major problems. So there should be many more indictments in this particular case, not just the inspector, but most definitely the inspector.
Right. Who
So-
builds the casinos out there?
Well, contractors.
Is it all just
I don't know.
Probably
What you mean.
tribal
Is it
members.
tribal?
You mean I don't know? I mean, it's hard
no,
rock,
I
so-
mean,
is it also
for a
in
long
the-
time, I think it was Manhattan construction in Oklahoma gets a lot of the tribal business. I think I could be wrong.
But who
on
knows
this.
in New Orleans, right?
Yeah,
I don't know.
If it's even government stuff, because they have set asides on government building for tribes. And I've talked to some
I don't
of
know
them.
if out there, if everybody but tribal members have their rights violated and not being able to own a casino.
Right, that doesn't really make sense because we know that natives can do nothing wrong, so I don't think
They're one with the animals.
Oh,
In
you
everything.
insult
All
me.
you have to do is watch the movies.
How dare you! My people!
Well, it's Dances
My
with Wolves,
people!
right?
I don't
Never watched-
dance.
Well, he was white,
Yeah, I know, but it's Dances
but he had
with
to
Wolves.
come
It's like,
into one
you
with
know,
the.
yeah.
We do movie
The
critiques
natives.
The
too.
white man does not, work with, white men can't dance and she can't jump, right? But,
wolves.
being
Because
one
that's
with
appropriation.
nature and, it's these
Kevin
Europeans that
Costner.
come over and start
God.
putting
Horrible
barbed wire
person.
fences up. See, the tribes didn't do that.
The appropriator in chief.
No, we're not going to go down that road.
Well, you ready to
Tall
move to
weeds,
state?
guys.
Yeah.
All right, we've got a
yes.
couple of state stories where you're listening and watching 3D Politics. I'm Tom McKay, your amazing host. I got David Vann, David Oldham, and David D'Ambroso here for all the great stories.
Tell 'em where we're from.
Okay. Well, if you want me to, make a suggestion.
Yeah, well, let's.
Not New Orleans.
Well, I mean, what?
Yeah,
what
I know
groups
what you
we
mean,
represent.
What do we got?
The thing here is, this is really good news, David, and you'll get to tell them where you're from later, just because you suggested it.
There we go.
This is really good news because it's Oklahoma officers, not public school teachers.
Now, this would be law enforcement officers, right?
Oklahoma law officers.
Law.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And this is by Dylan Goforth from the,
I know Dylan.
from the frontier. More
Yeah.
than 40 Oklahoma law officers banned for sex crime convictions in the last 5 years. There's something to look up. The crimes range from rape to sexual battery to child sexual abuse or revenge porn.
Yeah.
The guilty parties are from law enforcement agencies across the state, from metro departments Oklahoma City, Tulsa, and smaller outposts like Carter County, Wewoka, or Veneta. That's revenge enough. But imagine, here we are again, trusting more public servants. Public school teachers are civil servants. These law officers are civil servants. We pay them the money, and then they rape and batter.
Yeah.
Occasionally.
Yeah. One of
Do they
my,
have a warrant?
I mean, what do you expect them never to do that? Come on.
yeah, I
Some
mean,
of them will.
Well, and this is just the ones we caught.
Well, about 15 years ago, one of my my clients for my home improvements is an attorney, and he specialized in wrongful imprisonment and abuse by police. And he prosecuted a case out in western Oklahoma, I forget which county. The sheriff was running a prostitution ring using the jailed female inmates as the prostitutes.
Oh, wouldn't that it?
You know,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
Right,
do you
that's-
want it to go unregulated, or do you want the sheriff regulating it?
Yeah,
That's
right.
all I'm
There
saying.
you go.
It's exactly that point. In 2014, researchers at Bowling Green University conducted a study on police sexual misconduct. It looked at the arrests of 398 officers between 2005, 2007. It found that by affording unique, quote, unique opportunities for rogue police officers, end quote, to engage, quote, in acts of sexual deviance and crimes, end quote, that police work is conductive to sexual misconduct.
Yeah.
The researchers stated.
Sure.
And that's science, Dan Bruce.
Well, yeah, who's going to believe? You know, that's the thing. When you got somebody that you've destroyed their reputation because, in a lot of times, because of the crimes they've committed, and all of a sudden, when they cry, you know, hey, I'm being exploited, who's going to believe them versus
Right.
the cop?
Right.
And this
Yeah,
flies in the face of the idea that they risk their lives at every routine traffic stop.
Yeah.
They do not.
Well, I mean, look, it's no secret that people in general don't look at things based upon facts or objective reality. You know, I always say the facts are that 99.9% plus police officers do a wonderful job not breaking law, but it's also true that it is one of the safest professions ever. I mean, David Van risks his life every time he goes. It's statistically much more dangerous to go on a roof than it is to be a police officer. We're about 780,000 to about 1 million police officers in the country, depending on which statistics you look at, and fewer than 20 annually in the United States of America are killed due to felonious activity. Fewer than 20 are murdered. An equal number die because they're not wearing seatbelts. I mean, it is statistically not a dangerous thing to do. Where I'm from, wonderful city, over 100,000 people, Broken Arrow. We've never had a police officer in over 100 years of history killed due to felonious activity, murdered on the job. We have them die, but once again, it's traffic accidents. Far more dangerous to drive to and from work than it is to be on duty as a police officer.
Yeah.
That's just a fact.
Right. And you're right that by and large, most police officers do a great service to the community.
Actually, I dispute that
Okay.
because
Have you
if-
ever been raped by a cop, David? There we go. I rest my
No. Within the last,
that would be it. That's
the last
only,
5 years.
That's the only criteria. The reason I dispute that is because, and this is something that I think we all need to wrap our heads around. That while in general they do a good job, they also are complicit in numerous crimes against us. Okay,
The minority of
gun. No. The majority. Everybody is
okay.
complicit
Here's what you want
because
us to wrap our heads around is broadening our idea of what the crime is. Not just
Correct.
rape, not just sexual misconduct, but pulling you over at a DUI stop for no reason.
well,
Not
unconstitutionally pulling you over. Unconstitutionally, you having the DUI
These are
stop in the first
crimes.
place.
Violating the 4th and 5th Amendment.
Violating the Fourth
Shooting
Amendment.
through your bedroom window.
Or when you're
Yes.
sitting parked in the neighborhood cul-de-sac in Blanchard, Oklahoma.
Yes.
Awful.
Yes,
Should
my
not lie.
point is
We
that
have to.
these are all crimes, and every cop standing by allowing it and not doing anything to stop it and arrest the true criminals
But
in this,
Oldham,
the ones
have
with
you-
badges, those are complicit in the crime.
But I have to stop you, Oldham. Have you considered that they're just following orders and that justifies their actions completely?
Yeah, and that
Will
didn't
you
work.
accept- will you
That
accept
didn't
that
work in
argument?
Nuremberg either.
Bingo.
Is that a place in the United States? I don't think so.
Okay, one more story from the state. State Republican Party faces leadership. Hey, you know what? Let me just mention where everybody's from. David Van, David Oldham, and David D'Ambroso. Find David Van at Soonerpolitics.org, David Oldham at ConstitutionalGrounds.com, and Dave D'Ambroso right there on Facebook at Dave D'Ambroso. I'm Tom McKay, your host at 3D Politics. Find me right here. A state story. State Republican Party faces leadership disputes and claims of mounting debt. So, looks
I
like
hate this story because there's good folks on both sides.
Okay, this is a story by Randy, is it Crable?
Crable,
by Tulsa World?
Yeah, a prominent political writer for Tulsa World for years. Well known, fairly well respected.
First little paragraph here. Some Oklahoma Republicans are concerned about the state party's financial situation amid the apparent rift between Chairman David McClain and Vice Chairman Mike Turner. Financial problems and personality conflicts are not usual for either state party. This year's state Democratic convention ended in confusion, with Alicia Andrews of Tulsa declared state chairman by just 12 votes. More than once in the past 15 years, it has teetered on financial ruin. Mm-hmm. Tell us about it.
Well, first off, I've got to say Randy's wrong because the Democrats were having Mike Workman arrested so that he couldn't run.
Yeah.
So his premise that these rifts don't exist
that
in parties don't
unusual for either state party.
yes,
clearly wrong.
The Democrats are always pioneers in corruption and crap.
So the Democrats
We're just now getting into it. They've been doing it for
the Democrats
decades.
have their issues. The Republicans have had theirs. Randy Brogdon was one example. This is another one. There have been others, but no, I'm going to bow out because I just wanted to clear the air on that one.
$25,000 in debt just 6 months ago. It reportedly had a $10,000 balance. So in 6 months, they're suddenly in debt $25,000. What do you know, David?
More than I can say. It is a financial problem, and AJ Ferrati kind of explained further in the article some of the law issues that do make it a little bit hard for fundraising. But I don't know. I don't know that the laws have changed that much that we can point to that. We've had a lot of opportunities that have not been tapped into. Governor Stitt has not been tapped into to help with fundraisers, for instance. I'm not going to tell you what I privately counseled the people in this, because I've talked to both of them. One of the things I will say publicly is I've chewed both of them out for not talking to each other. And, it's a problem. And I think it's something that's going to come to a head probably pretty quickly.
So here's Turner in a quote: "Our job is to fundraise, take punches so the elected officials don't have to.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
strike back at the Democrats." He said that in an email. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. You want your party to be, when the other side is nipping at your candidates. Now, that's typically the role going into a general election, is you don't want your candidate playing defense. You want him to stay on offense. Therefore, your party is supposed to handle a lot of those. But we're early on.
And in the primaries, you want your party to be promoting your values.
Right.
So that rather than individual candidates, rather than taking sides and everything, you support.
That's something that needs to occur, because it seems in recent years the Republican Party is really confused as to whether it likes tax increases or dislikes them, whether it likes Obamacare or dislikes Obamacare.
Here's the problem. What we're supposed to be doing in the off years is raising a war chest. Instead, we've depleted ours, and we're pretty significantly in debt.
Sure, I guess that's probably the orthodoxy, but in reality, at least what I've observed, the candidates either get the money on their own or they don't have it.
Well, there is that, but
expect
how do you say, hey, the party needs to be relevant when the party's bankrupt and constantly going to the candidates and the office holders?
Well, listen, I've asked a lot of smart people, how do you make the party relevant? And I haven't gotten a really good answer yet, I don't think.
So, here's what I want to say on this. Yes, they should have been raising money. They should have been doing that. Gary Jones was asked to chair the budget committee just a week before our third state committee meeting. At the second state committee meeting is when we should have had a budget presented by the budget committee for the state committee to approve, so that the chairman is running the party on a budget and staying out of debt. We haven't done that. Gary Jones came on. He said to the state committee, folks, I don't have a budget for you. I just had my first meeting 2 nights ago.
How can they be governmental representatives if they can work a budget, David?
Hold on. So then he said, at the next meeting, which would be in November, he said, we'll present a budget for next year. In other words, we've given up on 2019. That's the year we were supposed to have this big war chest coming up. And now since then, I called him on the phone. He said, by the way, I resigned chairmanship of the budget
Guys,
committee.
make peace with Democrat ideology, not war chests. And I think that's what the party's been doing, because we've got people running for YR. They hate the president, they hate the governor, they love tax increases, they love Obamacare. We've got people involved in the state victory campaign that hate the president. And it's just, what's up with the party?
Yeah, but
why can't we have debates?
Unless you're willing to name
why can't
names.
we talk about the platform?
I'm going to ignore that unless you're naming names.
You can ignore it, but the people heard it.
Yeah.
Well, right here it says Turner says from the article, Turner says McLean and DeMont essentially had the same problem I had in 2016. They do not have the experience or connections to raise $150,000 a year needed to keep the state party going. My question is, does a budget committee is that like the committee does the budget and that's the vagaries? There's not a treasurer. How do we not know?
No,
whether
the
there's
budget
a
sets your spending limits that the chairman and the administration of the party has to live within.
My question is, how can we not know where the money went to the treasurer?
No, we know where the money went.
Okay.
That's not the problem. But the problem is way too much of it went. We shouldn't even have a credit card because we've proven that it's too easy to rely on it to the point where in 7 months we go 25 grand in debt.
So it's a spending problem once again.
It really is.
So what did they spend it on?
And I think that those questions need a good answer.
Mountain
and
Dew and
I
Skittles, as it were.
They
real good answer.
They need an answer like Colin Kaepernick needs an answer.
No, I haven't been able to confirm. It seems like everybody's talking to everybody and nobody's really reported to the presiding committee of the party, which is the state committee, which I'm a member of. So I haven't gotten any clarity on this, but I've heard some layoffs have happened.
Well, the state Republican Party is
offices.
clearly not on board with the new Trumpsonian era.
And here, my suggestion, and I'm totally biased, so take it with a grain of salt, because I actually care about policy and I don't care about labels.
Mm-hmm.
I care about outcomes and, not your words. Mm-hmm. The party could really stand up for what it believes in and release some kind of concise platform that is a few paragraphs long that talks about, I don't know, limited government, low regulation.
You want it down from 66
low
pages?
taxes. We don't support socialist or corporatist schemes like Obamacare, etc.
You want Medicare for all? Or?
And we can have debates so we can figure out, because we've got candidates right now, and I will name them, Kendra Horn, she's a Democrat, but I think she has the same policy, very similar to Van Sant. And Stephanie Bice is not much better. She's a D- from the NRA. You've got this lady, Van Sant, who's a Republican, who supports Planned Parenthood 6 months ago, is donating to Democrats 6 months ago, is a member of Sally's List. I think it's a progressive candidate forum or group. And so this is a true rhino. And I respect some people that say we need to be careful with those words. Fine, I'm being very careful. Show me one conservative policy. And you've got people running for chair of party positions that don't have a single conservative policy and hate all elected conservative politicians that are notable. So the party, to be relevant, needs to figure out what it's promoting and who these people are and say, no, we do not promote you if you do not agree with our ideals to 1%.
Well, I think in the primary, the party apparatus needs to stay out of that. I think they need to be fundraising, and once we get a primary, a nominee...
Healthy disagreement. I think they should be impartial, but a part of it. Part of presenting to the public what is the best Republican choice by hosting debates and in surveys. And some groups have done this. Surveys to say, what do you believe, record it, and then people need to hold the candidates to account.
I think
that you need to have debates.
That's a very valid role. Having the questionnaires, having the forums, the debates, absolutely. But again, you've got to then present the ballot to the voters and say, now, Republican voters, who are we going to put forward in November?
And this is what these folks believe. And here's our platform. You decide.
One of the reasons that the state party loses its effectiveness is because we have several of these nonpartisan elections, like in the city government. So how in the hell can the state...
You want to be relevant, make these partisan.
How can we get local and municipal governments to go in the right direction if we can't even identify what party they're in?
It was Dewey Bartlett's administration.
DBJ?
yes, that he
The
said,
uncle of Gigi
he
Bond.
said, you know what, Republican, Democrat really doesn't have anything to do with how a city is run. Yeah, my foot.
What a
You know,
beautiful thought,
and
but
you know what?
completely devoid of
I
fact.
gotta
and
tell
reason.
you, it
Very
came-
beautiful though.
It came back to bite.
touches me here.
It came back to bite
It
me.
did.
I remember we had him come speak to the Republican Assembly here in Tulsa, and Chris Medlock, a former city councilman, says, "Hey, what's the deal with this being nonpartisan? You know," he says, "What's up with that?" And Dewey says, "Yeah, I don't know. I don't particularly care for it, you know." And he says, "Well, who decided that?" And he says, "Well, I don't know." And Sally Bell, a former Republican county chair, says, "Oh yeah, I remember. You were the one that pushed it on us." And Dewey's like deer in the headlights. "Oh, I guess I made a
Love you,
stupid
Sally.
mistake."
Yeah,
You know?
I mean, who couldn't make that mistake? I mean, I guess
And-
Flint, Michigan's run the same way as like Broken Arrow,
Well,
Oklahoma.
you know,
I guess
as long as-
Dallas is run the same way as Detroit. I mean, you know,
And as long as you're willing to take our money for whatever your boondoggle is,
Yeah.
then it doesn't matter what party you're
Yeah.
in. And that's what they've proven, because they don't have any problem of illegally stealing money from us via taxation to create yet another monument to their graft and corruption.
and that's a stain on the party. Once again, 1010XX, you had a majority Republican vote on that in support of it. It was a totally pointless tax increase that doesn't address any of
That
the
was
underlying
completely
problems.
illegal from every angle you could look
Right.
at it.
So, that's the party can be relevant by standing up and saying, guys, this isn't Republican. Where is this in our platform? That could be addressed.
We talking about Kunzweiler going after the Johns.
Let's do that.
Okay, you want to let them know who they're talking to here?
Well, I don't have that story printed out.
Okay.
But yeah, you're joining 3D Politics right now with David Van, David Oldham, and David D'Ambroso, and we're going to talk about Steve Kunzweiler going after the Johns instead of the prostitutes.
Yeah, and I put the link up on 3D Politics Live on Facebook. Channel 6 covered the story really well. It was last Friday. They had busted, what do you know, a 6th grade school teacher from Ripley, that's outside of Stillwater, but she's part of this deal here. Now, I went over to their website, Ripley Schools. They washed
They have a
it.
prostitution tab?
In fact,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
And
I totally misread that.
They totally
Pizza. It was pizza.
They
Not
totally
much
watched
forward.
it. And in fact, one of the news agencies today showed the Google cache feed of it where they listed her as a teacher. Now
The
they're
internet
saying
is forever, guys.
yeah.
Archive.org, folks.
Yes.
Archive.org
Okay.
has it.
Google
Okay.
Wayback Machine, too.
So
That's
yes.
the Archive.org Wayback Machine.
But anyway, here's the thing I'm dealing with is the Kunzweiler statement. He said, referring to men, he says, if you are paying for sex and victimizing women, we're coming for you.
You're not allowed to have a wife or a girlfriend? What's up with that?
So, the crazy thing is, let's say it's not sex that's being sold. Let's say it's drugs. The kid down at the schoolyard who's having to deal with some drug pusher in the neighborhood selling in schools. Are we saying that kid who's paying for drugs is victimizing that drug pusher?
Yes, logically.
This is the asinine argument. Now, tomorrow,
And I think they are, because they're probably
Okay.
ripping them off,
Okay.
not willing to pay what they should.
Yeah.
for the drugs.
They
Tomorrow,
never pay on time, David.
Tomorrow night, Steve Kunzweiler is the speaker at Tulsa Republican Assembly.
Yes.
He has the whole hour.
Oh,
I want
right.
him to answer this. Now, they're making the narrative that these women are in sex trafficking slavery.
Hold on, Kunzweiler was
situations.
previously an attorney. Most DAs are.
No,
right?
he's a DA.
Was
is
he
a-
an attorney?
Well, he's been prosecuted.
He doesn't answer that question.
Right.
So I'm just
Well,
gonna
yeah.
throw that out there.
But my problem is, now, trafficking and kidnapping are two separate things. And I can say it because I used to have...
Not if you order the condom.
Yeah, okay.
That's one item.
A
cartel item.
couple years ago, the construction company owner, who's Hispanic, used to live next door to me, and his family's getting too big. He moves out and didn't sell the house. All of a sudden, I see a bunch of young guys there, and he says, yeah, these are a bunch of my workers. I'm, having them stay here. I'm putting up. And ends up, I find out after, their cover gets blown. These are all illegals from Mexico.
Way.
Yes.
No way. Don't believe it.
So, because what happened is the foreman, who's from Las Vegas, got into a blow-up with him and came over and told me, he says, by the way, coyotes are bringing another bunch. Okay?
Oh.
So what will happen is the American business will order, this is what I want, the coyotes will bring them, and the businessman will have to pay usually about $5,000, depending on what it is.
There are many guilty parties here.
And then that business will provide shelter, clothing, and a job, and that worker will work off that debt.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So
the Chinese
and
do
a
this
random
as well.
social security number generator.
Okay. It happens in all kinds of trades, whether it's sex trade, construction trade, anything like that. But what's going on in the Channel 6 story says that, they arrested a bunch of people, but the actual sex workers they did not arrest. They provided counseling to them.
No, the question
How
is,
many drug pushers get counseling to them, and then instead you go arrest the guy who bought drugs?
People want things to be fair, and maybe that's admirable, maybe not. But I know things will never be fair. I mean, women are not prosecuted to the same extent for sexually abusing their students as men are. I mean, they get
well, to keep
that's cool as long as they don't have the same rights.
But here's the thing, David. You're what you're selling though is, to keep your analogy correct, is you can't give psychological counseling to the drug, and so that would be like the prostitute. The pusher is who they've arrested. They are actually being very consistent in the way they think.
If a service is illegal or if a product is illegal, whoever is providing that
I agree.
is better. Okay.
But I'm just telling you, from their perspective, they're looking at the pushers of the girls.
So you really have to look at the tax documents to figure out if it's a self-proprietor.
First of all, now
If you're a sole contractor,
So that's really the matter.
Huge
Just look at their
assumption.
taxes, Kunzweiler.
Here's a huge assumption that Kunzweiler, and he may know something we don't, okay?
Right.
Of course he does.
Is that this is all part of a larger syndicate of workers being piped in just for this. Okay?
And were they were the girls the schoolgirls, or were they trafficked from out of country?
Or were they just teachers?
What were they doing? Other teachers.
Teachers aren't getting paid enough.
Certified?
Legislature.
What's up with all these government officials
I think
committing
there's
these
probably
crimes?
been a movie about that somewhere.
But this is
Lifetime.
But this
Whiskey
is, hey
business.
Brenda, this is a problem, and I'm hoping Kunzweiler can elaborate on this because I have some legitimate questions, and I don't think that we should just assume that, because I've watched, and you drive down 11th Street in East Tulsa at any time. I mean, they're there.
There are a lot of cool ladies.
And listen, they're usually the ones out on the street are trying to get your attention rather than you pursuing them. And there's a lot of loser guys who they prey on.
Listen, if you're cold, they're cold.
Okay? So, I'm just saying,
Not if you open up with the line.
they're
You firm on the price.
they're pitching a narrative that the customer is the evil and the purveyor of the vice is not.
Government is typically anti-markets because government
It's
doesn't
anti-man, is what it
understand markets. They don't understand supply and demand. They don't understand negative externalities. They don't understand any of this stuff.
And listen,
It's all voodoo to them.
if you're some loser guy who has to pay for it, well, I mean, we all pay for it, don't we? I mean,
Some guys pay for it because they want to, David.
It's just the manner.
Not because they have to. It's a lifestyle choice, David.
It's just a preference.
I like what Charlie Sheen
bigot.
is. Charlie Sheen is, you don't pay them for sex, you pay them to leave afterwards.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, that's Charlie Sheen's
That's terrible.
winning.
Tiger blood, guys.
Yeah, but anyway, so this is an issue, and I think Kunzweiler would do his office well to provide better context to this because this is
wouldn't
really
hold your breath, though.
Yeah,
I mean, they
know.
kind of operate, in total secrecy.
So here's another
in
narrative.
government.
Okay, we got to add this too because last spring, spring of last year, a judge came to me, James Caputo. They had set him up. Some women had been busted in a sting. Yeah, and he's single, so he'll go on a date once in a while, and a couple of women say, hey, I want to help you with your campaign and stuff. Hey, can we meet for dinner? And so he meets them at a prominent restaurant and stuff. And this one woman, and another woman's with her, and then says, I gotta leave. And they're talking, and then later he finds out this woman, starts saying, you know what I do, don't you? And he's like, no,
Like, tell me.
Yeah, and once he starts to figure,
like I do?
Are you a teacher?
As soon as he figures out she's in sex business here, he gets up, goes and pays for his, and leaves right away. I mean, he just, he could see this happening.
Two ladies guilty of bad appearances.
Not long after, he gets a call down at the courthouse, the staff says, that evidently somebody from the AG's office, and he never told me who, it wasn't the Attorney General, Mike Hunter.
No, it was an assistant.
Assistant
AG.
And says, I want resignation now or we're going to file charges on you.
Of solicitation.
Solicitation.
Right.
And he's like, no, you got nothing on me. Because I know I haven't done anything, you know?
But it became public, and that was
enough.
That was political death.
Like what?
Not that.
And in the court of public opinion, you're guilty until proven
Not that James
innocent.
Caputo was not worthy of being unseated, but that's a separate issue from the way they did it.
Yeah, and so what I'm saying is Caputo stared it down, and sure enough, there was nothing to it. No charges ever filed. And yes, it was
purely to steer the election.
2 weeks before the election, and he lost.
Just a coincidence in the time.
And so here's what I'm saying. If you're a guy out there who's being screwed over, and I don't mean literally screwed over, but
by a teacher or a non-teacher,
and you know things right, you're needing an attorney. I'm thinking James Caputo ought to be
consensually or non-consensually.
Because I think Caputo would be motivated to take this on.
I would hope so. The problem, the problem with anyway, I'm gonna.
Well, the reason I'm saying this, now I don't know how that setup where they smeared Caputo. Yeah. I don't know how much Kunzweiler was directly involved in that. But I do know.
I bet if you ask him, he'll tell you.
Well, actually, all DAs, and Steve Kunzweiler is our Tulsa County DA,
right?
And all DAs actually technically work for the Attorney General.
Now, when this infamous
not technically, they do.
When this infamous statement was made Friday night, and I watched the video, they didn't quote him out of context. He said it, and you know who's standing right behind Kunzweiler? Mike Hunter.
You're back to his original statement from the Post.
Yes.
When he said, what did he say?
He says, yes, if you're paying for sex and victimizing women, we're coming after you. And I'm just wondering how much...
Is he allowed to
selectively
enforce the law?
I'm just asking how much what Hunter's done and what Kunzweiler's continuing to do are connected. Because I think it was a Kunzweiler-involved sting that was going after Caputo.
Well, let's talk about this. I mean, are you allowed to selectively enforce the law and say, there's some laws I really don't like, or I know that both people are violating, both parties are, but I just want to prosecute one party.
He can definitely selectively move a case forward. He doesn't get to selectively enforce the law.
No, actually,
I don't really understand how that works.
Actually, it's unconstitutional given the oath of office here in Oklahoma. Yeah. The oath of office has 4 basic pillars. The first is that you support, obey, and defend the U.S. Constitution. The second is the Oklahoma Constitution. The third is that you do your job to the best of your ability. And that would go right to what you're talking about, where if you're choosing not to, you are choosing to not do your job. And then fourth is that you not take any bribes, that you not do or not do anything because of a remuneration.
So it sounds like you just grand jury these guys for violating their oath.
Yeah. Yes! That's my point! I've been
Yeah, and yeah.
No,
and,
I just came up with that idea right now, independently. First person ever.
Yes, that's good.
and
He's learning. He's getting it. That's right. It's your idea.
No, it's great. Because I want people to get the idea because we've been talking about it. Yes,
okay.
it's true.
What does the 14th Amendment say about equal protection?
Anchor babies and abortion.
David, I don't have the exact quote on
Well,
it.
what do you reference?
Well, I believe that the 14th Amendment encapsulates the idea of equal protection under the law.
Well, that's inherent in everything, but it goes out and says that we are all to be treated equally by the law, and that we are to be treated in the states equally under the Bill of Rights.
So Title IX goes both ways, right?
Well, Title IX is a violation of your rights because it steals your money to implement it.
Yeah.
So it violates your Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights in order to implement it in the first place.
Yeah.
So that's
Well, I got a couple of comments on this story. One of them is
No
about.
way.
Well, one of them is something we can fix, and I think one of them is just going to be here. The idea that there is the whole concept of Kunstweiler's attitude about prostitutes and Johns is the idea that there's no other way for a desperate woman to survive other than prostitution. It's a presumptive, stereotypical, sexist view of females. It also reinforces a false dilemma that encourages the sex trade. It teaches women, oh, it's the only thing you can do. It ties in to some other stuff, but unfortunately, the bigger problem I see that's fixable is the poor ability to write. He's a lawyer. The DA is, unfortunately, we're forced to assume his exact meaning. He's poorly composed his words. According to his quoted statement, one would be required to pay for sex with some entity and then also victimize a woman before he's coming after you. Had the DA used the article or instead of the word and, he could come after you either way. As stated, pay for sex, no problem. Victimize women, no problem. Just don't do both. You can't order the combo.
Yep. And I've got 3 real short stories.
We've got a couple more
Somebody,
stories.
it's basically discrimination. I mean, I think it's a discrimination suit here.
Yeah. You want me to hit some short
Do
ones?
it.
Or
I'm looking for the list right now.
We're going to have a talk.
Here we go.
Just before we
Well,
go
no,
to that, one of these
Dean
days we're going to
Davis.
have a talk about prostitution and the concept constitutionally in the first place. But we'll have to get to that later.
Well, we were talking about Hunt. We were talking about the AG and Hunter, weren't we?
The AG actually lucked out in that unconstitutional settlement with Purdue Pharma about the opioids. And this I actually, Thursday night, I'm at a banquet hobnobbing with the top medical school instructors, OU, OSU, and Jason Beeman from the OU Medical School here in town. We got to talking, and I said, hey, that bankruptcy of Purdue Pharma and all these states are having to line up in bankruptcy court to see if they get anything at all. I said, how did that work out? He says, oh, it was great. He says, yeah, the check already cleared. $270 million. And
there's a 48-hour hold on that.
And he said it cleared more than 120 days before the filing of federal bankruptcy, and therefore it's safe. They can't come get it.
Oh.
And I said, the legislature wasn't all that happy. And Dr. Beeman said, he says, here's the thing. They weren't going to cut that check to the state, period, because it would have the appearance of accepting responsibility. And this is what they didn't want to do. They wanted to look like some benefactor just doing something nice for the people.
Right.
And, so when Mike Hunter, who violated all kinds of spirit of the law for sure, if not letter of the law, but got away with it, he lucked out because, it looks like we're getting our drug rehab hospital paid for by Purdue Pharmaceutical.
Like the old philosopher Abraham Lincoln said.
I'm just saying,
and who cares about all the victims?
Yeah.
Just so long as we get ours.
Yeah, it grows the medical services industry is really what it does. And but I'm just saying he's going to come out looking pretty on that aspect. So that's
sad, the state of things. When you apologize, essentially the other side will use it as a predicate to say that they were justified. And bludgeon you with your apology. Oh, there's proof that you did something wrong.
But anyway, so there's the short of it on that story.
Representative Dean Davis pleads not guilty to felony charges.
Yeah,
So tell us.
this looks like it's going to go to trial, and his elective office is on the line because our Constitution says if you're convicted of felony, you're out.
And what was his
And,
felony?
well, he was.
I've heard there's some debate as to whether he's automatically rejected or not if it's a felony. I mean, I just heard both. I haven't researched it.
The Constitution says so.
Okay.
Got to be convicted.
So then, no.
It has to be a felony.
Yeah, felony.
Misdemeanor.
So
If
what
they
is
can,
the
if you can get
alleged
it pled down to misdemeanor.
He was arrested, and this is where it gets tricky because there's no dash cam, no badge cam. He was arrested for DUI.
No data, as far as I'm
And-
aware. No
yeah.
physiological
Yeah,
inputs.
he refused
No blood,
to take a breathalyzer test. He wanted a blood test.
Isn't that his
And-
right under the Fifth Amendment?
Yes, it is
Um,
absolutely his
okay.
right.
And don't they have to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that I just wonder how it's even possible for them to prove that he's guilty if there's no physical evidence?
Bingo.
To prove beyond a shadow of a doubt.
This is
I
where
think he wins.
Yeah, this is where it does get tricky because the way that the cops in Broken Arrow handled it is they were going back and forth. They started taking him to the hospital and said, okay, let's do the blood test. And then they turned around and said, no, we're not going to do
There's
it.
a thought that he was having
And
a diabetic incident.
What we do have, the only evidence we have, is while he's in a holding cell in Broken Arrow, he's calling his legislator.
And he doesn't slur a single word. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Guy sounds
That's
like he
very
hadn't had a
true.
drink
That's
in
very
weeks.
true.
So yeah, it was interesting, and there's some narrative. Again, if Dean's testimony is believable, this is on shaky grounds because what he has to do is prove that the cop was just being as belligerent as the cop claims he was.
Wait, Dean has to prove something, or they have to prove
Well,
something?
that's
No.
a good point. What I'm saying is
Yeah.
to put up a narrative to counteract what the cop says.
So I'm fascinated to
Yeah.
watch this. As an amateur science admirer, I would like to see how they can place alcohol compounds in his blood at that time without any physical evidence. I'm really fascinated to see how
Yeah.
they do that.
Yeah. So
Well,
and-
if they're going
Oh,
off of
his training, the police officer's training is so complete that it cannot be questioned.
I just
or
want to know
doubted.
how many alcohol molecules are in his blood based upon his training.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see that validated
Well,
empirically.
it won't matter because
That's all.
it's all about
So,
the officer's testimony.
Dave, hold on, I want to ask you, because he refused to volunteer a breathalyzer sample,
And incriminate himself.
they said, now you are guilty of obstruction.
Well, that's become the latest narrative, and that will be something that I think I will be talking to Steve tomorrow about because it's his office that are bringing the charges.
Yes.
And if they are bringing obstruction charges for actually just asserting your rights under the
Fifth Amendment
Constitution. And so you assert your Fifth Amendment right to not self-incriminate, not to do
Okay.
anything that is incriminating to yourself voluntarily, that they then need to go do it, that is not obstruction in the slightest.
Right.
And to call it that is criminal on the part of those doing the calling.
Remember when the Miranda right says you have a right to remain silent. That's a constitutional right. You had that right before they even told you you had that right.
Yes, it was just, and people knew it, but not everybody did. So they need the court ruling was just you've got to remind everybody
Okay.
at the time.
What I think we could see emerge from this is one of the greatest civil libertarian champions in the Oklahoma House of Representatives. And the reason I say that isn't to puff up Dean, is to say, you know what? When the shoe's on the other foot, it's easy to make all these rules. Like Dean was one of them who voted that when they arrest you, they can take your DNA.
Oh, did he?
Yes.
Oh,
I bet his
gee, I
opinion's
thought-
changed a little bit.
Okay. Well, let me for sure
I'll have to
check
call him
that.
afterwards and see.
He might have been one
I
of them.
thought
who
he
did.
was a little bit better than
Okay,
that.
I don't know about that
But-
specifically, but I know he did really well
There-
in some of our indices that, he
You know what?
he voted
might-
for liberty.
Yeah, I think he might have been one because he ended up being like the second or third highest in Freedom Index.
He was the highest
But-
freshman House
In your
member on the
Freedom
Freedom Index.
He and Jay Stiegel tied.
And it was very impressive.
Yeah, and so, this is where the rubber meets the road because one of the people he called is his colleague, Representative Ross Ford, a career Tulsa Police Department officer. And Ford says, no, you pretty much got to do what they said, And so Ford is going to give the mantra of what the cops want.
He might have been a little biased.
Yeah, but nonetheless, who did Dean reach out to was a career cop who he had, trust in his advice on. I think he's going to have a little bit of problem with some of that testimony. I think politically there's some damage when you try to make it sound like, do you know who I am? How dare you? Let me talk to the chief of police.
Yeah, the better argument would be like, I'm a normal guy like my constituents.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, some of that stuff happened. But,
but those are political issues, not matters of right, not matters of whether or not he's guilty or not. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem, is that when somebody asserts their rights, and this is across the nation, folks, that these obstruction cases are going. Mm-hmm. It has become the mantra of police. They've figured out that this will work. The courts are accepting it.
Based on precedent.
Because they're the gatekeepers to all this injustice. If the courts didn't allow it, it would stop instantly.
And there's another guy that probably sympathizes a little bit with Dean Davis. This guy named Donald J. Trump.
Same thing. They're doing the same thing too.
He's obstructing kangaroo court. Right. He's obstructing an investigation somehow.
Well, yeah, when you plead guilty, pleading guilty is obstructing the prosecution.
And I want to on this note, I want to commend the Spaniards who are demonstrating and pretty vociferously, in fact, in clashing with police over the conviction of Catalan separatists.
You mean the terrorists?
I don't know what all they were about, but people want to let Catalans leave them alone. The Spaniards will not do that. They're cracking down on them. And so there have been people rising up in the streets to actually try to protect these people who they think have been wrongly convicted.
On that note, I'd like to give a shout out to the NBA for being such a stalwart defender of human rights and standing up to communist China on their long storied list of human rights abuses. Good job, NBA.
Back to the Dean Davis thing. I got a question about if there's no blood alcohol data, it's one witness against another one. The police officer has to give us a reasonable testimony that he believes that Dean Davis was drunk. So, because Dean Davis is a state representative, wouldn't it be reasonable to look at the politics of the police officer? He did just recently fire a guy for his posts that were offensive. So
Dean
what are the
actually
policeman's politics?
From what I understand, Dean has actually thought that it was a setup, and that he was followed as he left a dinner that he was at, and specifically invited to go to, and so he has thought that it was something specifically done politically because of some of the stands.
Well,
how true that is, and so forth, and those are nigh impossible to.
Well, it is very interesting. When you call,
it would be something that
you call the police for a break-in, it's about 45 minutes for them to get there or more. But interestingly enough, Dean was only a few miles away from where he left. I mean, wow, they were Johnny on the spot, if that's the case. But I would say, he voted for constitutional carry, and we know that most of the police unions oppose it as one issue. So we know that there is reason to believe that police officers would be opposed to his politics.
It would be plausible reasonable to look through the public posts of this police officer.
While we're investigating things, why not investigate?
Well, let's get his phone.
Well, it was, Aspen.
Trust me, I believe his lawyers are doing
that. Far South Broken Arrow, Aspen Avenue is very dark. And, for that cop to have gotten, for Dean to have gotten the attention of that cop, I want to know, what led to it, that narrative.
Do we need dash cams?
Yeah, well,
but that'd be nice, right?
It would solve a lot of things, wouldn't it? And the sad thing is, you hear when people get shot by a cop all the time. Cops kill somebody, and the cops always say, if you just do what we said, none of this would have happened.
Play video games at 2 in the morning.
Hey, that's what the criminals say. If you'd have just handed over the money, you wouldn't have gotten shot.
For the win!
You had nothing to hide. You got nothing to fear, guys. You need a Fourth and Fifth Amendment. That's for criminals.
So don't stand up for your rights. So.
I just want to read this real quick. We always take it for granted. I think most of our viewers are very intelligent, and they know what the Fifth Amendment says. Paraphrase, but just reading it says, no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia when in actual service in time of war or public danger, nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. So you can get into public domain with that, or eminent domain. So
you get into taxation.
Where in the world, where would a traffic stop fit into the category of the Fifth Amendment? I mean, where would it be an indictment of a grand jury?
He's not charged with an infamous crime.
Right. There's no argument at all, I think, where you could say a traffic stop would compel you to give up your Fifth Amendment right.
What they have, typically before a criminal trial, there is a hearing on the evidence or a grand jury. So one or the other. And I believe when I looked in the records, he's waived his right to the hearing once it goes straight to either the trial or maybe they're still negotiating a settlement.
How many guilty people do that?
Yeah. Well, here's
They're starting to cloud the issue.
No, this is...
If we're just tuning in, you're tuning into 3D Politics. I'm Tom McKay, your fine host. I've got David Van with SoonerPolitics.org, David Oldham with ConstitutionalGrounds.com, and of course David D'Ambroso on Facebook at Dave D'Ambroso. You can contact me, Tom McKay, right here at 3D Politics. I've got two more stories when we're finished with this one before we're done.
I just want to say in 1993, then Governor David Walters had all kinds of criminal charges against him for campaign violations. And, they were all there, but what he did was go with D.A. Macy, I believe is his last name, and plea bargained it down to a misdemeanor. And then he was allowed to go into the county courthouse there in Oklahoma City after hours, a locked courtroom, and plead guilty to a misdemeanor.
Well, you can't
done in secret.
You can't have politics without crime. I mean, really?
Yeah.
I mean, what? If they're making prostitution illegal, they're making politics illegal.
Yeah,
come on.
I mean, was he worse than Fallon? Really?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. You've got one politician, Kunzweiler, up against another politician, Dean Davis. And if Kunzweiler does anything less than charge the felony, then Kunzweiler could suffer, at the polls. Because he's not enforcing the law evenly. You see what I'm saying?
You mean like not charging both the prostitute and the purveyor?
Yeah.
You mean like that?
Yeah, exactly. Great.
Okay, I was getting confused.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But again, he's concerned about optics because he's got to run for re-election. So he's got his thing.
Does he have a strong prostitute constituency?
Don't put yourself out there.
And this is why I know you don't believe in term limits. This is why I believe that our DAs, our prosecutors, should be term limited out, because I've seen it over and over again. Over time, in order to ratchet up notches on their belt, they'll go after the poor, not necessarily minorities. Particularly, I see it more the poor who don't have the money to defend
low-hanging
themselves.
fruit.
Yeah.
They pad their records.
Yes.
I have a great record. This person can't defend himself.
Well, Trey Gowdy has a 100% record, right? As a prosecutor, and that was exactly what David's talking about.
Well, if he couldn't do a slam dunk, he usually negotiated out a court plea.
Of course.
Yeah.
But my point is that the things that he did get, they were low-hanging fruit, and there were things he was able to manipulate.
Kunzweiler a politician, I think, is kind of diminishing his actual role, because I think anyone in the legal system is more like a cleric or a bishop above society. They are like these super
He
branch
should be
of
acting
society.
that way, but he acts as a politician.
No, I have a problem with both, because he does let his values impact things and that. And I have, on the marijuana case, you and I debated on that, and yeah, it's just this
Wait, he actually debated you?
Yeah, it was after a meeting.
I'm going to give him some points for that. I'm shocked.
And, he was criticizing me. George McFarland and I were snickering at a point he made. And he goes, I saw you snickering at
Don't do that to the bishop.
and the bishop would be accurate because, that is his Roman Catholic faith. But again...
Well, they are a super branch. They legislate and judge.
It'll be a little bit of a bastardization of what C.S. Lewis said, that the moral busybody is worse than the tyrant, because the tyrant might grow tired of his oppressiveness, but the busybody will never...
It's a progressive.
Because they are affirmed by their own conscience that what they're doing is in your best interest.
Yeah.
It's when Kunzweiler says, I'm doing you a favor by sending you to prison, he was arguing against 781, which would have moved it back to misdemeanor. He says, no, I need to be able to prosecute a felony for simple possession.
I want you to solve the 40 to 60% of unsolved murder cases
Oh my God.
before you get the guys that like to smoke marijuana.
Well, the point is, again, that what he was having a problem with was actually a right. Mm-hmm. And he has a problem with people exercising their rights at times, and that's always been my criticism
we
of
can't
Steve.
blame him. That was part of his catechism.
Yeah, and Steve, if you're listening, there are good things about you that we honestly like.
I like that you're not Ben Fu, and I really like how you held your cards really close to your chest during that election, and you didn't say anything, and Fu was just pummeling you. Yeah. And then you're like, who did you vote for in 2008? And he's like, Barack Obama, and I'm proud for him. Like, interesting. Who did you vote for in 2012, Ben Fu? Barack Obama, I'm proud for him. And you're like, I rest my case. Brilliant. Worked out great.
So is that a prosecutor or a politician?
Both. Well, they're both, because they have to get elected, so they have to be a politician.
Yeah. Okay.
By the same token, and this is why, again, I come back to, we the people are putting in and not asking the right questions. We're putting in people who are actually disqualified from office.
Yeah, because the right question, if you'll ask him this tomorrow, if the nagging wife of an unemployed man forces him to get a job at the coal mine, is she the pimp or the victim?
Yeah. By the way, there's a petition for a grand jury just got filed last week.
I heard about it.
Yes, and this is going after, first of all, the pharmacy board director, Chelsea Church, now former, because she got fired as soon as this hit the news a year ago. But we have not prosecuted her, nor anybody over at the health department.
For $30+ million.
Wait, we
just
don't even know what
missing.
they're being prosecuted for, Van.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Well, she wanted a poison pill in the medical marijuana rules,
right,
so that there would never be a dispensary be able to open. The health department could lock them down because they weren't run by pharmacists, and it had to be a pharmacist who is well enough trained in cannabis medicine. And guess what? They don't train pharmacists.
That's awfully cynical, Dave.
Yeah.
Could it be that she just wanted the best for public safety?
But again, it was a board member who presented that very same language that she tried to get the chief counsel to adopt, which was Julia Zell, and she refused to. She finally, I think it was her lawyer, fessed up and showed this text message of all the offers, and the same thing was offered to her, that it was essentially the same language, got put forward by one of the Board of Health board members. It was Dr. Terry Gerard. And so you got to ask questions. Who wrote that paper out? That
looks like nothing happened.
Yeah. There's nothing
to see here.
Yeah. So there's things at the Board of Health that have to be answered. And the district attorney, David Prater, Democrat.
Why don't they just meet with him after hours?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Down to Slapland.
So a bunch of dispensaries in Oklahoma City I've talked to said, we want to circulate that petition, and they'll probably get that in real quick order. So that's one. The other one is going after Epic. We're going to evidently get a chance to see what, in fact, Ron Sharp did, what state resources he may have
Ron Sharp
used. Who's been attacking epic charter schools and their founders, even after they came out clean. Again, what did we tell you last summer?
Same type of thing they do with Trump. They run him through the false mill.
Yeah.
Well,
time.
and they're
And it seems like
rehashing the
Ron
same
himself
evidence.
may be guilty of a
So-
crime, right? He's at least accused of making
Yeah,
up
'cause
where
he
he got his
slandered
PhD
stuff.
from, like a mill.
So we're gonna, hopefully have a prosecutor look into that, and then the third one is gonna be a bunch of these, sexual harassment and sexual battery charges that have been floating around the Capitol. This one came out last May,
I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of grand juries coming out.
Yeah, Representative Chris Kennedy, I think, is one named in there, and I think there are some others. That's going to be interesting. By the way, Kennedy was
Try to know where his money comes from.
Kennedy, evidently, I'm hearing from, actually, Al Gerhardt published it last night, and I talked to his source who confirmed it. The Republican House caucus met, and Chris Kennedy wanted to be the Speaker pro temp, and so he tried to get the rules thrown out by 2/3 vote of the caucus, and they wouldn't go with them. He was about 12 votes short.
Wow, that's pretty close, though.
And
wow,
but
he wields a lot of political power. Then, if you think about it,
yeah, because again, he got a bunch of platform caucus members defeated in primaries and runoffs. So that's 8 more.
Wait, I'm sorry. He spent money against sitting members of the Republican Party.
Sure.
Really?
Sure.
Yeah.
Is that part of the platform?
Oh, it's totally
Can
allowed.
you do that?
How did
Okay.
Bridenstine get into office? He ran against the incumbent. It's okay to run against the incumbent. Again, but he funded them, and now all of a sudden those 8 more people that owe their office, at least in part, to him. So him and Josh West, and those are a couple of people that evidently their shining star is fading a little bit. So there's a little inside politics coming from some of the sources that I've talked to and other people have. So
We got a municipal local story if you're done with that one.
Yep.
Anybody else? One final story for 3D Politics out of Sand Springs. They're going to force men to wear bras at least, which I think is a good idea,
at least pasties, man. Put on either pasties or pee or
A little strap or something. Gotta hide those areolas.
Nobody wants to see your back fat. That's all there is to it.
I can't wait to see a biker gang driving through and all the men wearing bras.
I think the Sand Springs is doing it correctly because one of the I forget what channel it was. He was interviewed, I think the police guy, and he was saying, we're not going to just go out there and start cracking down on whether you're wearing a shirt or not. He said the most important thing, it requires a citizen's complaint. Mm-hmm. So the idea here is that you ought to be able to, there's nothing illegal about playing loud music unless what? It begins to disturb the peace. There's nothing wrong about showing your back until you've disturbed the peace. And so when you undulate past normal all the way into obesity, it becomes disturbing. Okay? And that's when you have to call somebody and say, it's just disgusting.
You mean brave and stunning. He meant to say brave and stunning.
Be brave and put on a shirt.
Healthy it anyway.
It is sad that, if you're good looking, people don't mind, but if you're ugly, we do mind. To your point, a police officer's peace cannot be disturbed. So they must have a citizen complaint on that. There's a number of things like that, you have to have somebody. The cops can't just...
I've seen some videos. I think police officers can have their peace disturbed.
Well, I don't know.
Don't play Xbox at 2 in the morning. Don't do it.
The 10th Circuit's issue, I don't believe was something that came about because of a complaint of disturbing the peace. I believe that was strictly that the police saw an illegal act by the coach woman bearing her chest and wiggling in I think
wiggling
in I think undulating, whatever.
What rate of
and I think in trying to sell her services.
She's a victim.
Not a crime for
If
her.
she's twerking, she's a victim.
If she's topless, she's a victim.
Hey, but they arrested her nonetheless.
Yes.
So figure that one. But the point is that I don't know that in the facts in that particular case that there was any sort of disturbance of the peace.
Right.
Once it becomes a municipal code that it is required wear in public, that kind of thing. That you can't bare your chest without the brassiere or the mansiere or the bro or whatever you're going to call it. That
male decency
once that
apparatus.
happens and you don't comply, you're subject to arrest or citation or whatever.
I just like the basic timbre of the policeman from Sand Springs that was interviewed on the television. He was saying, there's a level of common sense that we're going to use here in Sand Springs.
Now, mind you, this is what they say today. This is not what it will be
they just
later
want to
on.
be left alone, David.
because the point is that once it gets on the books, and this is the problem, once it gets on the books, then it can go any which way you want. And this is the
Takes
reason
on
that
a
we
life
need
of
to
its
clean our
own,
books.
and it is a pretext for anything, right?
Yes.
One of the rumored candidates for Senate 37 is Phil Nolan, who's on City Council in Sand Springs, if I remember right, or at least he was.
Let's get his opinion on back fat.
Yeah,
But I'd like to hear it.
anyway, at first
Male
I
and
heard.
female.
At first, I heard from Sand Springs that they're not going to force, that women have to have tops. They were going to defy AG Mike Hunter because he says no, the law still stands. He wants to have his showdown. But it's going to be problems in some areas, or women going to complain, my areola is bigger than hers, so why should I have to have bigger than,
God.
Areola
transfer.
It's a fair argument.
You guys let me do the bad jokes.
Yeah.
So we've got everything settled for today. You better tune in next week on Monday at 7-ish, and we may go even longer than 8-ish. I'm Tom McKay, your fine host of 3D Politics. David Van with SoonerPolitics.org. David Oldham, ConstitutionalGrounds.com, and David D'Ambroso on Facebook. Reach him at Dave D'Ambroso. I'm Tom McKay, your host on 3D Politics Live. We'll see you next week.